Hey everybody! Special live at 5 today for Thursday because we kind of skipped yesterday. Trying to do a little bit less live at 5s as we have been very busy just talking to people and lots going on behind the scenes. So I'm going to give it a few seconds to see if we have some people on. Lots to talk about today. There's so much to talk about today, and we'll try to get through it in 10 minutes or less, but I tend to go over, so I'm sorry. So there is so much to say today at our Stand Up Delaware live at 5 for Thursday, June 4th. As we are all saddened by George Floyd's killing, as we are saddened by any unnecessary and cruel death, this group has taken a stand for peace by not focusing on the riots that have occurred and are continuing. But instead we want to focus on the future of our state and of our country. Now is the time to reopen Delaware immediately and fully. Some are still cautious, so based on these riots, full of folks on top of each other, shouting, and as Dr. Rattay shared on Tuesday in her very educational video about shouting, you spray tons of droplets of the Rona on everybody when you shout. And she cautioned everybody about singing. I don't know if you caught that. She cautioned about singing multiple times. Okay, I can't. I'm going to bite my tongue. Hopefully not getting droplets on you when I bite my tongue here about Dr. Rattay. So next weekend, so if you follow this happened last weekend, right? So next weekend, which is 2 weeks, 14 days, if the politicians and the politically connected doctors and the media are correct, we will see mass disease and deaths from COVID-19. So we'll see. Just give it another week and we'll start to see that, right? This group, formerly known as Delawareans Against Excessive Quarantine, is now Stand Up Delaware. We have been very respectful and careful to law enforcement and the communities in which we hold our rallies. They were all successful, and we left them cleaner than when we arrived, and no destruction has ever taken place. Since the beginning on April 13th, when Dee Dee and I started this group together, I have faced death threats, violent threats, lies spread against me, lies said about my marriage, lies said about my husband, attacks on our business that still continue. I was called multiple times a bioterrorist and that I should face charges and prosecuted for facilitating the spread of COVID-19 to the masses. One rumor says that there's multiple warrants for my arrest. Okay, I'll move on. This past weekend, we witnessed a lot of riots. The destruction of stores and businesses, property, the beating of innocent people, and the killing of police officers. Black police officers, to be specific. The media puts those people who committed these horrendous crimes on a pedestal as if they're heroes. Yet I am a bioterrorist, and this group is comprised of selfish, inconsiderate, and dangerous people. Okay. The naysayers and haters, they want for you to think that we're not making a difference, but we are. I'm going to make a very bold statement, and I think most of you are thinking this. Just as this shutdown has nothing to do with COVID-19, these riots have nothing to do with what happened in Minnesota last week. The timing is no coincidence. Just as most states were going to begin phase 1, this mass protest and riots went radical in our cities and streets. Do y'all remember an elderly married couple, Paul and Lydia Marino? While visiting their son's grave, as they did every day, weather permitted, they were mercilessly shot at point-blank range. They were executed. 2 white people murdered by a black man. And it's not considered a hate crime, and no one ever mentions them anymore. That slaying happened just 1 month ago. Folks, this is about evil This is not about race. Did Derek Chauvin use excessive force? And was he reckless? And is it possible that he caused the death of George Floyd? Yes. Do we believe that when he woke up that morning, he set out to kill a black man that day? Do we know that for sure? No. I believe there will be justice for George Floyd. Derek Chauvin does not represent the majority of law enforcement. Cops kill twice as many white people as black people. 50% of victims of fatal police shootings are white, while 26% were black. Some say, but whites are 62% of the population and blacks are 13% of the population. I get that. But according to the Wall Street Journal study done in 2009 from the Bureau of Justice Statistics, there is a concentration of criminal violence, 62% of robberies, 57% of murders, 45% of assaults in the 75 biggest counties in the country. Despite them only comprising of 15% of the population, these crimes were committed by blacks. Those are facts. When you compare these statistics and the percentages of crimes committed, white people are disproportionately killed by cops. Those are the stats. Those are the facts. Yet the media ignores this. Law enforcement are not racists. I honestly don't understand these protests, but I support anyone's right to protest, even though the same people that attacked me and Dee Dee and this group are some of the ones protesting right now. The last thing I want to say on this matter is police lives matter. I'll leave it at that. So today, we had a major victory for our churches. From the Rutherford Institute today, in a major victory for our First Amendment rights of churches to not be unfairly discriminated against in their efforts to worship in accordance with their religious beliefs, Delaware will no longer impose any mandatory COVID-19 restrictions on houses of worship beyond those that are generally applicable to other secular entities. The concession comes in the wake of the First Amendment lawsuit filed by the Rutherford Institute attorneys in Reverend Dr. Christopher Allen Bullock versus Governor John C. Carney, which challenges the manner in which the state government have subjected churches to more stringent COVID-19 restrictions while allowing exceptions for big box shopping stores, liquor stores, and gun shops. The latest guidance issued by the governor's office on June 2nd removes all prior prohibitions and mandatory restrictions on church gatherings, replacing them with recommendations that churches can use as they determine how best to safely and responsibly minister to their congregants. President Trump, 2 weeks ago, said that all houses of worship open, fully reopen. If looters and rioters can run free without restriction, our churches can open their doors and hold worship services again without threat. So please do so. So let's talk about our self-employed. We have some self-employed in our group that have reached out to me and had some good conversation. So our self-employed in our state are in trouble. They are not receiving state unemployment or their CARES Act funds. These people are 3 months out with no income. We have a few members who belong to a group called Unemployment Delaware Information and Help. I recommend this group. Join if you are experiencing the same difficulties. I've read through a lot of their posts and they have a lot of good information, phone numbers, and testimonies to help those who have been living for 3 months without assistance. I'll post the link in the comments. There will be a special Speak Up Delaware with Rob Arlett about this subject 1 week from today, Thursday, June 11th. This is a very important subject, and I'll be posting more about it as we approach June 11th. Teachers, I've been reaching out to you and I've heard from a few, but I need to hear from more. So teachers and retired teachers, this group is asking its members who are teachers, administrators, paraeducators, and other school employees, retired teachers as well. We are trying to form a committee to compose a white paper to submit to the governor and the Secretary of Education, Susan Bunting. Last week, 3 working groups were appointed. According to an article in the Delaware State News, the Health and Wellness Working Group is chaired by Mike Rodriguez, Associate Secretary of the DOE, and Megan Walls, a pediatric psychologist at Nemours. Academics and Equity is chaired by Monica Grant, another Associate Secretary of the DOE, and Ashley Giska, Assistant Superintendent of Laurel School District. Operations and Services is chaired by Chuck Longfellow, Associate Secretary of the DOE again, and Oliver Gums, Director of Business Operations at Cape Henlopen School District. The members of these working groups range from educators to students to parents to members of the state legislature. The final recommendation is slated to arrive to DOE by early July, so we don't have much time. These ideas can be processed, and then Dr. Bunting said, so we need to move on this immediately. Many of these members are from out of state. I've read them. I've listened to the press conference from Susan Bunting, and I don't really understand that, but several of them are from New York City. Don't understand that. I'd like to find out more about those committees, and if anybody has more information, please let me know, because I am working on several different projects and I really don't want to neglect this. This needs to be our main focus right now for this group, is to get our schools reopened and reopened without ridiculous mandates. So to be sure we are well represented, we need to be heard. And some of the suggestions that I've heard about is mandatory masks throughout the school day and mandatory influenza and pneumonia vaccinations for all students. We need to be sure that we are heard, because we cannot let that happen. So again, to wrap things up today, I want to talk just a little bit more about what's going on around us. And just to reiterate that this is not about race. We have come so far since the 60s, the decade I was born from. Every decade improving since. Don't let the media and those in power convince you otherwise. Violence as a way of achieving racial justice is both impractical and immoral. I am not unmindful of the fact that violence often brings about momentary results. Nations have frequently won their independence in battle, but in spite of temporary victories, violence never brings permanent peace. I refuse to accept the view that mankind is so tragically bound to the starless midnight of racism and war that the bright daybreak of peace and brotherhood can never become a reality. I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word. Martin Luther King. I believe that too. So I'll be cutting back to one video per week. We're going to call it Stand Up Delaware video per week going forward, unless something urgent comes up, as I have now returned to my job after a long leave of absence since April 13th. Dee Dee, myself, and the admins of this group are still committed to supporting solutions during this very difficult time. So stick with us, stay the course. This is far from over, but we will get through this together, so don't give up hope.